Hi, everyone. Welcome back. We are super excited for the coming session, and I hope you had lots of fun networking with your peers in the break. And I'm sure you're enjoying all the engagement activities. So continue being active and participative in the activities which we've planned for you all during the entire day and get a chance to win and be on the top of our leaderboard. We're almost at the end of our agenda for today, and I hope you all enjoyed the sessions and had some amazing learnings throughout. And yes, now moving to the much awaited session of the day, with the onset of COVID-19 pandemic last year, organizations across the world were faced with an unprecedented challenge that demanded a complete rethinking and recalibration of the workspace as we know it. As organizations brace themselves for the onset of yet another reality, HR leaders are focusing their attention towards recovery in earnest, laying the concrete grounds for employee experience spectrum in the new reality. Joining me for this discussion are an exciting panel of speakers, and let me start by welcoming Behram Sabawala, CHRO Tata Click. Behram is pursuing his passion for the people. He is a chartered accountant with more than 3 decades of experience in audit, banking, treasury, finance, and accountancy, and is the CFO of Tata International Distribution Vertical at Tata Africa, Johannesburg. He also enjoys researching topics such as positive thinking, people development, team building, and effective personal leadership, and makes regular presentations. Next in line is Anu Mathews, Chief People Officer, Pine Labs. Anu is an innovative and people focused professional with over 18 years of work experience in two diverse countries, backed by a strong educational background. Having worked both in the younger organizations and established large ones, she brings a holistic perspective and unique approach to the leadership and building in a sustainable organization. Next in line is Kevin Fritas, Chief Human Resource Officer for Dream Sports. Kevin's experience includes more than a decade of business consulting and human resources with technology companies. He enjoys the coaching and partnering with senior leaders to lead their business, culture, and organizational transformations. And yes, next is Nishant Gaharwar, Senior HR Leader leading OTT brand. Nishant is a seasoned HR leader with a profound experience of having worked with brands like Oracle, General Motors, and Uber India. He drives talent management practices, leadership development, aligning the behavioral learning activities. And yes, to moderate this panel in a very fun way, we have Tanmay Jain, founder and CEO inFeedo. Tanmay needs no introduction, but I will do my bit here. He is also a speaker in the field of mental fitness. He's helping HR leaders of 100 plus brands like Tata, Coca Cola, Airtel, Lenovo, Samsung, and Xiaomi build stellar remote employee experiences and find the hidden gaps in the culture. And yes, I know I have spoken a lot, but before I hand over the frame to Tanmay, just to remind you all, we would be choosing the best question, which will give you a chance to win an amazing. I'm sorry, there was some echo. No worries. Which will give you a chance to win an amazing Amazon voucher. So keep pouring your questions during the session. And yes, now I'm handing over the frame to Tanmay.
Thank you, Soumya. For the audience, just want to give you some context. The entire panel here has already spent an hour or two with each other with so much energy 5 minutes ago that I'm nervous for a change. So I want to give you a different perspective on their introductions once. So if Soumya, you can share the screen. I want to give you some context to where everyone's coming from, what everyone's headcount is. I'm sure you know their companies already. So you can see which industry everyone is from. For example, Behram's from e-commerce. Yes, Nishant's from Hotstar. Oops. He's from an OTT brand. And Kevin's from fantasy sports and so on. But what you will notice is their headcounts. Ballpark, everyone's less than 1,000 with the exception of Anu, who's at 3,000. Some interesting personal passions. Behram's like a coach outside of work. And Nishant, by the way, loves traveling. His favorite destination is Italy, right? His favorite food, and like because he loves culture, is wine. Kevin loves books a lot, so much that he wants to open a library, right? And he's currently reading Coffee Can Investing. Anu's doing some interesting stuff in community service. She's doing goat farming, right? And she loves Netflix. She loves Sherlock. She hasn't answered Benedict Cumberbatch or Robert Downey yet, but I don't know. And I love music, of course, as you can see.
Benedict.
All right, cool. So that's just context on everyone, their background. If you want to take a screenshot for the rest of the session, now's your time. All right, so we've narrowed this session down to 3 questions today. Of course, for most of you folks would know it's about the role of CHROs. But I do want to acknowledge 2 things. One is thank you, People Matters, for making this HR exclusive. I mean, I have friends trying to sign up and they're saying, oh my God, you have an HR cult in the making. So thank you, People Matters. And second is I do want to acknowledge Pride Month. So whoever is celebrating, please continue celebrating. Now, yes, the first question for today, out of the 3 questions, is what unique perks, what unique initiatives, systems that are new have been launched by the panelists after the pandemic, right? These initiatives should either be improving employee experience or mental well-being. And I did get a chance to speak to everyone. And before I hand off to Anu to go first, I do want to share some initiatives that have been common across the panelists, right? So the first thing I noticed is everybody's got really strong financial assistance as low as 30 minutes from the request. Everyone's got extremely good medical insurance, which covers COVID. Everyone has task forces, rapid action teams for COVID, where they're measuring the lives impacted. And most importantly, they've scaled the human effort as opposed to scale it down, right? And the usual ones, but a really good one is no meeting Thursdays, no meeting Wednesdays, no email days. And of course, one of the panelists actually set the default meeting as 25 minutes and not 60 minutes to save time. But these are common things across all. But Anu, if you can now open the show today with only the unique ones.
Sure. Thank you, Tanmay. So last year and a half has been, the worst health crisis that all of us have been dealing with and experimenting to tackle the challenges that the pandemic brought our way. So at Pine Labs, I think the one different approach that we have taken is our leaders have been at the forefront on this mission. So we've significantly increased our connect points with people, and we've made it a very high-touch organization. So whether it be the leadership coffee meetings, we cover about 1,000 people every month, and this is starting October. It helps both sides, the leaders to understand people and the markets, and the people to get a chance to express their ideas, concerns. So that's worked very well for us. Other than that, leadership has changed. It's not just about business results, but more about the whole person and individual well-being. We organize monthly health initiatives now, starting last year. And our most successful health programs were the ones where we actually had our leaders champion it. I'll give you a few examples. Like one, we organized this 21 days healthy habit challenge, where each leader, including our CEO, signed up for a 21 days challenge and enrolled people onto the program. So like Amrish, our CEO, he would do everyday posts on the groups to encourage people to start the healthy habit. The one that he chose was running. And similarly, I chose one and everybody else chose one. What it did was really inspired people to adopt these healthy habits. Our chief business officer is our designated health champion. So we're all so inspired by his 6 packs. Similarly, the other program that we did was, say, the Happiness Challenge, 10 days of building emotional well-being. We had about 1,000 people enroll for it. And a lot of it was prompted by the managers who drove the program. So a lot of things which was led by the leaders, which I think has worked very well for us as an organization.
Got it. And Anu, I love how you told me offline that for you, CEO is the Chief Empathy Officer. And on that note, I want to hand off to Kevin because your CEO has publicly announced different titles. So how about you go next?
Yeah, so, to answer your question, there are 4 points, largely. The first is, on growth. The second is on communication. The third is on benefit, and the fourth is on culture. Coming to the one on culture specifically, I think, when Harsh announced that he's the cultural enforcement officer, there's a very strong belief there. I think for every organization, the belief is that culture is the most important thing in your organization that should scale. right? And for most people, it starts breaking, when you are 100 people, 150 people, and you grow to 400, 500 people, it starts breaking. And the idea is to ensure that, it doesn't break. Yeah, there is an echo. I can hear an echo. But I think, very clearly for culture, the most important thing that for us that we believe is that, you should look at scaling it better. And the way that we look at scaling it better is both founders, our co-founder and founder, they are our cultural captains. And the rest of the top management is the other vice captains, right? So our focus every day is on every practice to make sure that, it's scaling the right way as we add more people. The second is on benefits, right? What we've tried to do is that even through this pandemic, all the benefits have continued. In fact, we've only doubled down. We've made sure that, if people want to live closer to the office, even though they might not come to the office, we still support, their rentals. We support them up to 2/3 of their rents over and above their compensation is paid by the company. The idea is to ensure that if and when we get back, to, our office, or we call it the stadium, it's much more easier for people to transition between their home as well as the workplace. The third is on communication. I think it's very important, and most people forget about this, that, we are poles apart, right? We are no longer situated in the same place. The lack of communication needs to, be addressed slightly differently. At Dream Sports, we have town halls every week. We used to have it every month, but we now have it every week. And I think that kind of connect is very, very important. The fourth is growth. Everybody should look at this as an opportunity, for how do you grow your team, how do you grow your people. And I think that's been a major focus for us too. So nearly everybody at the company, whenever we run a survey, it's about the learning that they actually discover. Even though this might be a pandemic, there's enough of opportunity to learn, enough of opportunity to take up new things. And we have a program like a club transfer where you can transition from one division of the company to another. So we try and promote this in the most possible manner to everybody. And I think that has amplified, the cultural connect that we have with our people during this time.
Got it. No, Kevin, I really like how you call your managers captains. We do that as well as at inFeedo, your office, stadium, your function leaders as vice captains. You really sort of embraced it. But speaking of dream sports, of course, Hotstar, Disney, and Nishant, these are massive brands, right? With regards to the Disney acquisition recently. So if you can share more from the whole Disney perspective and how things are, would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I would specifically focus on Disney plus Hotstar, because that's the business that takes most of my time, energy, focus, etc. I loved how Kevin kind of classified them into four, and I just took a cue from his book, and I'm just going to do the same. So the first one is around mental wellness, and just that feeling of connectedness. Some of my team members, along with a lot of our employees, are running these sessions, which are theme-based sort of sessions. So there's a week for happiness, there's a week for key moments, there's a week for gratitude. And that has allowed it to keep it fresh. And it's all Slack-based. Slack is our primary channel of communication. So it's all Slack-based. People are posting their thoughts, their ideas, pictures. And it does kind of bring in their whole selves to work. I mean, frankly, I have started to get to know more of my colleagues and my team members than I ever did in the last 2.5 years. So that's one part of it. We've branded that on the umbrella of pause, reflect, and reboot, because that's the whole thing. We were moving at such a fast pace. I mean, think about it. Who could have ever dreamt that IPL, which we telecast both on Star Sports side and on the digital side in Hotstar, could ever happen in remote working situation? So we just wanted to make sure that people do get an opportunity to pause, take stock, and then recharge themselves. So that was one thing which did a lot of benefit. And it's hard to kind of sometimes figure out exactly what the benefit it caused, but we believe with a lot of feedback that we've received that it was a great thing. The second thing I wanted to talk about was on the benefit side. You've spoken to Tanmay already on some of the common benefits. The one that I wanted to talk about, one is around the home quarantine. Maybe everybody else also has it, but we've been able to include that because beds were so non-available across the country that we kind of decided to include home quarantine as a support. But the second and very important thing is we made all of our benefits equitable. So whether it is coverage for your same-sex partner, so we made sure that it is equitable to all members of LGBTQ community as well. And whether it was adoption, whether it was medical insurance, any sort of thing that we are doing, we make sure that our benefits are equitable and they are for a diverse set of population. And that's something which, and you said, right, it's a Pride Month, and and even though I would say it's not being done for the Pride Month, it has been a work in progress for a while, and we've been kind of delivering on that. And I'm super proud of doing that. The last thing that I would say is really the leadership support. And I think sometimes we end up not thinking as much about it across the board. One of the things that our leaders have been doing a lot is kind of saying, listen, work and anything related to work can take a backseat, especially when the second surge happened. We went official by saying, listen, no problem. You take as much time as you require, whether it is for yourself or your partner or your family or whoever. One of us is going to cover for you, or some of us are going to get together and cover for you. Don't worry about that. And I thought that is something that I saw employees recognizing a lot, because that really spoke directly to each one of them. And I think oftentimes we get so lost in programs and processes and financial incentives, etc., that we forget the value of this human-to-human connection and touch. And I just thought I'll share that.
Got it. No, thank you, Nishant. In particular, I love the fact that you mentioned that it's not just for the Pride Month. It's something that should happen anyway. Also, a couple of things I've learned as well, right, at inFeedo was, I think number one was the fact that when I spoke to all of you, in fact, I learned this from all four of you, that best practices is a word which all of you hate, right? It's like trash now. Because you don't want to follow the norm, the peers, and best practices sort of denotes that. And everyone's starting to talk about first principles and what matters for your unique context. So I think that's number one, what I learned from all four of you. The other thing that I learned from our customer base was, interestingly, what they do is to drive behavior in their organization, they reprimand and recognize well-being or happiness, right? Because what you reprimand or what you recognize is what drives behavior. So in their town halls, what they've started to do is they've started recognizing managers, or in your case, captains, with the happiest teams, or let's say managers with the highest well-being, right? And I love how, Anu, you also mentioned that you put women in the forefront in your town hall with their stories, or like Nishant, like you mentioned, you have your stories as recent as this week in context of Pride Month. So my learning was that town hall is a super, super interesting opportunity for a recurring agenda with regards to how you want to drive well-being. But on that note, Bhairam, super excited because you are the only CFO who's been a CFO, now CHRO at Tata Click. What's your perspective on your KPIs for your HR team, and have they changed post the pandemic?
Thanks, Tanmay. The answer to the second question is no, because we don't believe anyone or any situation will change who we believe we are. We will keep improving on our version of who we want to be, but nothing much has changed apart from a few very exciting initiatives like unlimited paid time off and choose your notice period, which is stuff that we've come up with over the past few months. But in terms of the KPIs, being a finance guy myself, the best compliment the board paid me recently was when they said they'd never seen an HR strategy document with so many numbers on it. And I believe that it's extremely important for us as a support function, as the heart of the house, so to speak, to be accountable ourselves to deliver value to the organization and not just be fuzzy about these things. So in terms of the KPIs, we have something that we've devised called a perfect hire. And a perfect hire is 5 different components. It's offer on time, joined on time, 45-day Amber score, which is our chatbot that we use to connect with our people on a regular basis, 45-day amber score, either 4 or 5, which is good or very good. 90-day manager score. And in this environment, I think having the employee stay with you for 90 days itself is a big tick, given what we're experiencing across the tech and e-commerce spaces. So that 90-day manager score needs to be an A or a B. And the 180-day performance review or the 360-day performance review must, again, both be an A or a B. Also, the other two big pieces are the engagement score, for which we use a quarterly Gallup and a regular Amber feedback survey, and retention. I don't like to measure attrition. I prefer to look at it as retention, and the healthy retention, which is the retention of our A's and B's. We have a target today of 90%. So these are, in sum and substance, what we are accountable for as the people team at Click.
Got it. No, Behram, thanks for the crystal clear articulation, right? Because that's something that did catch my attention. But Nishant, since you also mentioned that change, your initiative should not be a result of the current context, and who you are should be who you always are. I want to go to you next for your KPIs as well. Have your KPIs also remained the same?
I think the KPIs have remained largely same because they're much more overarching. What we have had to pause a little bit on and focus all of our energies has been, of course, the COVID support to our employees, and especially in the second surge. That's been very very pertinent that we had to kind of pause. And I just wanted to kind of take Kevin's word that he had used. Don't sweat about the small stuff. Some of that small stuff will keep on happening. But instead of small stuff, I would just say that make sure that you are there for the employees at the time when they really require you. So if anything had to take a backseat, we have happily allowed that to take a backseat, and people have been very understanding. But in terms of the KPIs, I think my two big ones have remained the same. Or OKR process is something that we introduced more recently, about a year and a half back, when our new CEO came over. The first one around a people-first organization, that is a KPI which is there on every single business leader. And to just kind of take on from what Behram said, super important to put numbers out there. Behram, I have to admit that our numbers are nearly not as articulated, as sharp as what you mentioned. So I'm taking a little bit of a lesson from you. But what we have done is we've picked up on ENPS. We've picked up on time to hire for specific leaders. We've picked up on various things that constitute the people first culture, and we have started to put numbers on that. And it's been there for about close to a year now. So that's one. And the second one is our hiring numbers or our hiring targets haven't changed. If anything, because of the newer things that we intend to do, which of course I would love to talk about it, but cannot over here. We are expanding like crazy, and those numbers, if anything, they've just kind of accelerated and they've kind of become higher. So Tanmay, just summarizing, the OKRs or the KPIs have not really changed, but wherever we had to pause to make sure that on the forefront we are helping our employees in the time of their need, we've been very cool to do that.
Got it. No, Nishant, one of the things I learned from you yesterday also was that most of your OKRs and KPIs are centered with the input KPIs as well, because culture has a long gestation period. Even if you make changes today, it'll take at least 3 to 6 months to reflect. So I think that did wake me up in some ways or the other. But Anu, would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Hey, thanks. So, I have a different view on this one. My KPIs have actually changed with the pandemic. And it's also because the pandemic has changed all of us, right? A lot of the things that we wouldn't do previously, like, the sort of focus on wellness or health, has now become the forefront of any people function responsibilities. So, and I've given it a more twist towards my KPIs. So I've got 3 big ones out there. So one is an awesome work role for every individual. So in terms of defining KRAs, KPIs, and also a little bit more towards how you unbox people from the standard roles and the goals associated with it. How do you give them, say, additional projects, allow them to grow, expand their skill sets? So an internal mobility program that enables that. And like Tanmay and I were talking, the squiggly lines rather than a straight line approach to growth. Okay, so a squiggly line of career growth that allows you to pick up additional responsibilities as you go along, allows you to match your interest area with what the organization has to offer, and a lot of movement around that. So that's one of the things that we are trying to work towards. Our own HR team, we're working towards every person having a double hatting project as well. Okay. Second one that I have is a lot of automation and redesign of the people processes. So make the typical HR processes totally redundant and gone. So if it can be done by a machine, it should be done by a machine. And all the fun stuff is what the team continues to do. So automation wherever possible. A lot of it has happened, like say the onboarding processes, exit processes automatically have gone completely remote because of the pandemic. The third KRA that I have is building a culture of connect and friendships at work. So it's no longer a work persona and a home persona that people have. It's all merged together. So how do we build support mechanisms at work? How do we really build friendships at work so that you look forward to hanging out with people at work? It's no longer work, but something that you enjoy doing. And I think the realization for me also has come with this recent wave of the pandemic, where we suddenly realized that this was non-manageable with a small HR team. And there's just so many people who came forward and said, yes, I'm ready to volunteer, I'm ready to support. So one of the programs that we launched is the Mitra program, which is about a lot of employees. So we have about 250 employees who said, hey, I want to be part of this support mechanism. I want to be a mitra or a friend to a colleague and a co-worker. And it's been beautiful how the program has worked and how we've been able to save lives as part of it. That's how my KRAs have changed.
Thank you so much, Anu. I think that's very helpful. And I do want to sort of introduce the third and most fun question for the panel, right? Because we were debating at what point does culture break? And we collectively identified that culture breaks at 150 plus, roughly speaking, when you cross the 150 plus headcount. And it's even harder when you go remote, right? Because from maybe 2 offices or 3 offices, or sorry, 2, 3 stadiums, as Kevin said, you've gone to 150 plus stadiums, right? So the question is, how do you measure employee experience and productivity? And do you even entertain like anonymous feedback in the process? So Behram, if you could start with that question, please.
Sure, Tanmay. I think one of the things that we've done, and this was pre-COVID, was reach out to our employees for feedback more often than the earlier Gallup annual survey. So we chose Amber, the chatbot that talks to our new employees 5 times in the first year and twice a year thereafter. We look at Amber very, very seriously. Both the CEO and I look at feedback every morning with our coffee. We do not wait for issues to become concerns, to become complaints, to become attrition. We ensure that anyone with a single concern is reached out to in just a few days. In one voice, our leadership team, when we were faced with a huge Gallup move up in the score last year, we moved up 0.4, which was massive in a Gallup situation where global organizations usually look at 0.2 as being a really good improvement. We moved up from 3.6 to 4 in one fell swoop. And it was a unanimous feedback from the leadership team that the chats with Amber, more than anything else, had helped us get to that stage. We have now happily consolidated on that score, and the quarterly Gallup surveys through the pandemic have taken us up to 4.15, which is where we are today. In terms of your question on anonymous feedback, I'm not personally a fan. We have a very firm belief that at Click, we will be uncomfortably transparent, but there is zero tolerance on disrespect. We have to ensure that people are allowed to voice what they feel, but in a manner where the recipient of that communication is accepting of it so that they can work together and build something of value for the company. And the other piece that we've just begun driving is 51 of our lowest scoring managers on the Gallup survey have been called upon to share a 3-point action plan, which was due today and will run from today till the end of June, because we have said we will not run our next quarterly Gallup survey until we have these actions implemented. Because there's no point asking your employees what you need done without actually demonstrating that we're going to do it. So all of this cumulatively has helped us, especially through this period.
Got it. No, Behram, what's interesting is I know a lot of people like Touchwood who have been using Amber, but you're amongst the only few ones who have completely sort of disabled anonymity, right? And that's a very strong stance. But I would love to sort of open this to Kevin now, right? So Kevin, do you believe in anonymity, and what's your take on, let's say, measuring experience? Any questions you ask?
So I think you got to do what works for you. And, the experiments that we've run show that, you actually get 10 times more feedback, when you're anonymous, because there is a bias associated with who's asking the question, right? If a senior management team member asks the question, it's treated as more serious. If somebody else asks a question, it might not be treated as serious, right? That's one. The second is that our own experiments with anonymity and non-anonymity, we have a town hall. It's not anonymous, right? So you can ask a question, you will be live. But very few people ended up asking. And when we opened up the anonymous bot, which we run on Slack, right? There were a whole list of questions that came up, about our strategy, about our plans, about, small things as well. I think just getting that contribution from people is important. So the goal for us is getting that contribution from people coming in, right? I do accept what Behram said. It needs to be respectful. And sometimes you need to step in, when people get personal, and target, teams or target people without any constructive criticism, right? And we've stepped in a couple of times. And I think that stepping in is important, because you will get questions. You will get a lot of constructive criticism. And I think you've got to keep yourself open to that. Otherwise, you will believe that, things are working well. Everybody respects each other and nobody's asking questions. But deep down inside, if you were to give out that opportunity to people, even for a day, you would suddenly see a rise in the number of questions being asked. The other fact that I also like to mention is that some of the individuals do ask questions anonymously and then put their name. So you could have a system that, allows for people to say, hey, listen, great that you have an anonymous system, but I'd still like to say my name. The second bit, that you asked about is in terms of, productivity, right? I think the productivity, is more of a proxy measure that we look at out here. Like Behram talked about Gallup, we look at something called the Team Health Survey. There are a couple of questions there, but largely, you're focusing on your nodal agencies, which are your captains. Do I want to work with my captain again and again and again during this period as well? That's one of the motherhood or fatherhood statements that I think is very important. The second most important thing is my captain understands the work that I do is respectful of, my work and life balance. I think that's very important, because right now what individuals are facing is that they have two operating systems. It's like a laptop having both Linux as well as Windows, right? Or any other operating system that you like, and you're booting them up at the same time. You're experiencing, my kids just across the room there, my wife's in the other room, right? And you're hearing a lot of noise and you've got to work, right? Just like we are facing this today. So you have two operating systems, both loading at the same time. And the only fulcrum is you, right? You are the only program that's actually being split and working on these two together. I think that kind of understanding in the second question is very important to the way that we're looking at team health, because it serves as a proxy to ensure that Kevin or anybody, in our organization is experiencing the right kind of experience to be able to deal with the situation in their home as well as at their work lives.
Got it. So, Kevin, what's interesting is when I was speaking to Nishant, he also mentioned that when an anonymous survey comes, he writes his name down. So I think I love the radical candor over there. And but just as a closing in the final point, Bharam, would you have a response to Kevin on the anonymity? Because I see contrasting viewpoints.
Yes, I was actually straining at the leash here. We actually got only 30 anonymous messages, 30, in the first 18 months of using Amber, right? So we took a call on this only after we had fact-based data to provide the backing for taking this call. We do not encourage anonymous messages because we believe that a lot of what comes to you in anonymity is perhaps not as well founded in fact as a message from a person that can be identified is. And overall, what we are driving is a culture where people must see that there is no fear of retribution. And this has also extended itself to ethical concerns that are raised, right? When you have a posh complaint, for instance, or you have an ethical dilemma that arises from the manner in which someone behaved at a party, right? So all of these we've put together after we've taken a strong assessment of what we believe our culture is at today. So I don't think it's a black and white here. It's various shades of gray. And as Kevin said earlier, I think each organization must pick what you believe works best for you. But we found that not encouraging people to be anonymous actually helps them more than anyone else. And in that collective help, the company has benefited as well.
Got it. Bharam, you mentioned moral and ethical dilemmas, right? And I remember discussing this with a few friends that this is the only area I felt our education system, amongst many other areas, would have been stronger in, because you don't know what the right thing is. It's always gray, right? On that note, when Kevin cracked the Linux versus Windows joke, I noticed as an engineer, I was the only one laughing on the panel. But on that note, would love to hear closing statements, maybe one-line sentence from each of you. How about we start with Anu?
Hey, I think in closing, a lot of learning from each one of you. I feel that the future ahead for us is in terms of a high-touch, leader-driven organization. A lot of opportunities for people to learn, grow with squiggly line careers, opportunities which allow part-time, gig working, all of those mixed together. In fact, 10 years down the line, we might actually look back and think about how, hey, remember 10 years back, 2021, we only had one job with us at that time. So 10 years down the line, all of us might be working on these different gigs, enjoying it for that matter. So that's how I see the future panning out.
I'm excited for that. Kevin, what about you? You're on mute, Kevin.
For me, it's when will the party stop? When will this easy money party stop? And, the talent market's going crazy, ballistic. It's going higher than the stock market right now. So I'm really curious as to when this is going to stop and, how the talent market is going to do in the next couple of years.
True, Kevin. I think with borderless talent now, it's higher than crypto also. So next, over to you, Nishant.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of experimentation that will happen. And I often wonder that whenever we do very well thought out changes, we do change management. With this rapid experimentation, a lot of things that we are doing, we may need to reverse them. And I wonder if the gurus on change management have thought about a reverse change management. And then I also feel that, so that's something that we need to think about. The second thing that I feel very strongly about, at least right now, is, are we inadvertently confusing efficiency that is coming in, that, hey, everybody's working remote and still KPIs are being met? Are we confusing efficiency with effectiveness? And I'm not sure how effective we will be in the long run. I hope we are, but just a question for all of us to ponder over.
Oh, Nishant, I love reverse change management. So, Bharam, mic drop is all yours.
at my age, with all the tech floating around, this is an unfamiliar world. But I'm very convinced at the end of the day, there is a human being with a beating heart involved. And we have to be able to take care of him or her to be able to be effective. And we must never lose sight of that. There's too much in the world today that is intangible. I still come from a generation where you were successful when you created an asset. And that asset was something you could touch and feel, right? So I know I'm a little outdated, but the beating heart is something that is, and it's core to everything that we need to do.
Love that. Truly mic drop. Thank you, Biram. This panel has been amazing. I just want to pause for a quick poll with the audience. Meanwhile, there are about 3-4 questions that we will be able to answer right after this. So People Matters team, can we start a poll? I presume the poll is started. If not, the most voted question on LinkedIn, by the way, I did a post yesterday, was from Ankur Wariko, almost 100 likes. How do you replicate the energy of a team in person, which now has gone remote, right? So that physical energy in a remote setup. Anyone wants to answer, one or two of you?
I honestly feel that you believe nothing has changed, right? And someone sent me this photograph of an old Motorola phone, right? And said, if COVID had happened 20 years prior, just imagine the challenges we would have had in trying to stay connected. So even in a pandemic situation, I believe we have a lot to be grateful for. And tech has enabled all of this. Let's not think too much about not being face-to-face. We're face-to-face now as well, right? And at the end of the day, it's all up here. So I'd say keep things simple and just deal with change as it hits us.
Just to add to that, a real life example in terms of us coming together, the 6 of us, I think it's been wonderful levels of energy. And what Behram said was absolutely right. If we take that time and trouble to connect with each other, I think the energy levels continue to stay high.
Got it. Yeah, I would save a couple of questions for you, Nishant and Kevin. And Soumya, just checking, is the poll off screen now? Can we proceed with 2 more questions?
One, if possible. We are already over time.
All right, no worries. So I see Pranay Bhagat has asked a question. Hello, he says. When you want to prioritize people first strategy, from who do you face the stiffest resistance? The CFO, sorry, the CFO, the CEO, or the board of directors?
Yes, Kevin, this question is for you. Go ahead.
we don't face. I think the biggest challenge comes from our own mindset, right? And if you believe that everything is fine, and everything is great, and you don't need to constantly improve, I think the biggest challenge is you, right? So the biggest challenge will be the HR team rather than anybody else, because you will think, even if you're in an organization where you face these kind of issues, the biggest challenge is you, because you don't want to challenge it further. You think that this is the new normal, this is acceptable, right? And even if you're in a great place where you've got top of the line great place to work trust scores, top of the line Gallup scores, the challenge is still you, because you don't believe you need to improve, right? So for a people first organization, the biggest challenge will be the HR team and the mindset that they look at. That being said, any of your stakeholders, they are your supporters, so don't look at it from an antagonistic point of view. They are not villains in this thing, right? You are all in this together. Your biggest supporters are the people who you serve. Your biggest supporters are the stakeholders who you serve, right? And it's a very privileged role that most HR teams have. And it's not only their challenge. I think it's the entire challenge of the top management team to make sure it's people first all the way, till you end it.
Got it. I think what's interesting is for you, it's slightly easier because your CEO has a title culture enforcement officer. But I think there's just one or two more questions I'd love to sort of take. Sorry about this, Soumya. So Abhinav Srivastava says that budgets are usually a concern when investing in anything related to mental well-being, employee experience. Behram, would you like to touch upon that as a CFO?
I don't believe there should be the word budget when you're talking about protecting your employees, supporting them, caring for them, and being there for them. So we magically had 40 people volunteer within an hour to form what has become our most efficient task force in the history of Click. We've helped all our employees across the various regions of the country. Of course, it helps that we're not overseas yet, but they've come together magically to help people with hospitalization, with home quarantine, with just about everything, including when someone lost someone. We even went to that level of ensuring that the funeral arrangements and the hearse and everything else was done. So there's no budget. It's all in the heart. And you lose far more by not doing this and by not caring and not being there for your people than anything that you can spend while doing it.
In fact, Tanmay, I would just, when Behram was talking about how people have kind of come in together, I think that has been one of the most amazing things. And there was, it was a WhatsApp forward that I read, but it rang so true for me because it said that, whenever somebody's going to say, hey, human beings are inherently selfish, I think I'm going to have to ask them to re-examine their belief, because this pandemic has shown us that people who you're never going to meet ever, who have no connection with you, you're still willing to step up and help them. And I think I just couldn't help but think about this when Behram was talking about similar things. Yeah.
Thanks, Nishant. Thanks, everyone. I just do want to acknowledge in front of everyone that this panel has been amongst the most amazing panelists I've had in my last 8 years at inFeedo. So thank you, everyone, for this amazing energy, which, by the way, as per the question, is on a virtual call and not in person. So we can make it happen. Thanks, everyone. Back to you, Soumya.
Thank you so much, Tanmay. And yes, before I let you go, it would be great if you could just choose the one best question for this session, because we have an amazing prize for that one. So meanwhile, you hunt through that. I would like to say a big thank you to everyone. Behram, Anu, Nishant, Kevin. It was fabulous, not just on the screen, but also off screen. So thank you so much for joining us today. Yes, now everyone, we are going to move to the next session. But before that, please don't forget to share your learnings, your aha moments with the outer community using the hashtag PMEXIN, and you might get a chance to win an eco.smart speaker. So please use the hashtag and keep the words flowing. I'm going to see you on the other side of the agenda for the closing keynote with Lisa Woodell. So thank you so much and see you all then.